Blam is a manga from an era long gone. It's a timeless remnant of the old style of manga, before the clean and polished look of the modern day took hold. This time period of the medium is perfectly encapsulated by its art and its edge. These series had such a distinct and unique art style compared to anything you see nowadays, and most, if not all of them, feature violent or horrific imagery abound. There's something so captivating about this time period in the anime and manga space. Whether looking at some of the OVAs of the time, or some of the masterpieces that emerged from it, every facet of this culture seems a world away from anything we can see now. And if there's one piece of media I would champion as special from this melting pot of series and franchises, it would be Blam. Blam is special. I could name a million things that make it different from so many other manga, especially sci-fi manga, but if I had to start with something, it would be its embodiment of the phrase, show don't tell. Through the entirety of Chapter 1, there are 18 lines of dialogue, only 2 of which are said by our main character, and another 2 of which just consist of the word hey. And all of these lines of dialogue happen well before the halfway mark of the chapter. Many stories are exposition light, this story is exposition free. Never once do we find out something through unnatural exposition dumps, never once does a character sit down and explain something purely for the audience's sake. If you don't understand something in the story, read it again, because no one's here to hold your hand. I've read this series 3 times or so in the past few weeks, and it really doesn't take that much time to get through, considering it's only 60 or so chapters, but every trip through this disturbing and psychedelic world is something new, and only after the 3rd time reading through the story did I feel like I had any right to talk about it. This story takes place in a structure known as the City, an insanely large cybernetic mess of a structure constructed by these robots called builders. The city was built to house humans at an unknown time in the past, but it has since gotten out of control. A group of humans used to possess a special gene known as the net terminal gene, which allowed them to interface with the system in control of the city, the Netsphere. The Netsphere is a hyper-developed version of the internet which housed the conscience of the administration, which was a council of extremely powerful and capable artificial intelligences of some kind. The administration, along with devices known as safeguards, were responsible for protecting these humans with the gene. However, at some point, things started to go wrong. Humans stopped being born with the net terminal gene, and those who did have the gene stopped being able to use them, and slowly, the city fell out of control. Because the administrators were made to help humans, they were unable to act properly in the face of this disaster, as they were restrained by the very code intended to protect humanity from them. Since no humans had the net terminal gene anymore, the city's administrators had their hands tied, and despite their wishes to help the now powerless humans, they are unable to do anything. The safeguards that were also supposed to protect the humans saw the humans as foreigners now that they didn't have the gene, and started exterminating humans whenever they came into contact. And as for the builders, due to their limited intelligence, they continued building and maintaining the city, expanding it outwards for an eternity. Without instruction though, the builders created chaotic and disorderly things, stairs to nowhere, statues of people never known, terrifying labyrinths of pipes and wires, iron and steel. This is the world we were dropped into without a single warning. The city is separated into layers, different massive megastructures piled one on top of another with little rhyme nor reason. And this is one of the most amazing and terrifying parts of Blam. The design of the city is almost akin to an H.R. Geiger painting. It's a biomechanical monstrosity, with the pipes and detailing of the structures looking almost like veins flowing through the artificial land. Every locale in the city feels consistent with the knowledge that those that built it are teetering on insanity. There's no sense to anything, there's no symmetry, no architectural style. Humans are not meant for this world, no organic beings are. This city is ruled by creatures of steel and silicon rather than those of blood and bone. But despite the alien nature of the surroundings, Killy, a lone being, roams around the desolate city. His goal is to find a human with the formerly abundant net terminal gene and use them to stop the city from expanding and bring order back to dystopia. Killy is a mystery to us throughout most of the story. He navigates the narrow catwalks of the city with a superpowered gun in his hand, but not much is known about his origin. For most of the story too, Killy is a blank slate and rarely gets much direct characterization. He's shown to be vaguely compassionate as he takes the side of the oppressed in some conflicts between organic beings, but since we rarely ever hear Killy speak, we don't really ever know much about his personality on a deeper level. However, this isn't really an issue as the story is never really about Killy on his own. He is essentially just a vehicle for the story. He is the person that allows us as the audience to meet all of these people living inside the city. And he also makes it possible for us to explore the complex structure of the world along with him. Even though Killy isn't the most developed person, as I said before, the people who make their way into Killy's story make up for it in spades. There are a ton of factions and people, all who have their own unique ways of living inside the city. The fishermen, the people of the capital, the dry men. Each of these groups have their own ways of life and their own ways of making it in the harsh world they're trapped in, and each is extremely entertaining to find out about in detail. All of these groups pop in and out of the story, only being showcased for as long as they contribute to Killy's quest to find a human with a net terminal gene. However, there's one character that sticks with Killy through thick and thin throughout his entire quest, and this character is Sibo. Sibo is a scientist formerly employed by the capital who is subjected to extensive punishment after a failed experiment occurs and destroys a section of the city. When Killy makes his way through the capital in search of the net terminal gene, he finds Sibo and frees her from the punishment they were subjected to. The two then liberate the capital from the oppression of the president. From this moment on, Sibo joins Killy on his journey to find the net terminal gene, moving up through the city together. Again, despite the lack of dialogue, I found myself really growing attached to the relationship between Sibo and Killy and feeling genuine fear whenever they got separated, as I didn't have any doubts the series would be willing to kill characters off. But even with my fears, the duo manages to stay together for most of the story, encountering many challenges along their quest. One other thing that's kind of tangentially related to the art which I feel deserves some praise is the character design. As I said before, there are a ton of different denizens of this world, all with different goals and interests. However, each feels unique not only in their personality but also in their appearance. They all have completely different designs from each other, making it impossible to confuse any of the world's many factions. The art style for a lot of the characters may be slightly off-putting at first, but it gets really familiar after a few chapters of the series go by. Two of my favorite designs belong to the different forms of safeguards and silicon life found in the series. Safeguards, as I already explained before, are the former guardians of humanity that turned on their masters now that all the humans lost control of the net terminal gene. These safeguards come in different tiers based on their strength and power, with tier 1 safeguards being common enemies that are frequently treated as cannon fodder. They are still extremely powerful, but humans can reasonably defeat them with the right tools and circumstances. Moving up though, some of the higher level safeguards are insane looking, with a similar vibe to the city being reflected in their deformed cybernetic selves. These super powerful beings are Deathbringers that are almost impossible to defeat and are a hazard to any who wish to survive in the city. Safeguards aside though, one of the other major factions in the city are known as Silicon Life, basically cyborgs. These beings are the most frequent enemies of Killy along with the safeguards. Silicon Life try their best to kill all humans, especially those with the net terminal gene, as if the city comes under control of humanity again, the acclaimed heretical beings known as Silicon Life will be purged by the pure humans. These Silicon Lives are frequently described as bloodthirsty and destructive beings who solely exist to kill humans. However, some clearly have other motivations, as shown by some of them just wanting to survive until Killy strikes them down. But that ethical dilemma aside, almost all of these life forms have amazing designs as well. They have mechanical bodies with more organic parts jutting out in various places. I actually love the whole design philosophy behind this world and how so many of its inhabitants feel cohesive within it. Finally, to end off this video, I want to briefly talk about the ending and a fan theory that's been going around about the series. And this section will contain spoilers for the ending of the series, so watch out. So near the end of the story, Sibo is transformed into a level 9 safeguard after they attempt to stop that same safeguard from wreaking havoc on a stratum of the city. This safeguard is integrated with a sphere in its abdomen, which it shows protective, almost motherly instincts over. The genes in the sphere are shown to be a combination of Sibo's genes and either the genes of a human known as Seiyu or the genes of a safeguard known as Sanakan. This sphere is foretold to house a human with the net terminal genes, but will only flourish in a place outside of the main body of the city. So at the end of the story, Killy takes the sphere with him to the outside world, or someplace inside the city with water and plants in it, where the sphere is shown to awaken and start to mature. After this, Killy is seen escorting a child with a gas mask on through the pipes of the city. It is assumed that this child is the one with the net terminal genes, as shown by their gas mask, which may presumably protect them from whatever ripped the net terminal genes away from their former holders. However, this isn't the part of the theory I have a problem with. So the first two logs of the series depict Killy escorting a child through the city. However, during this, they are attacked by two silicon lifeforms, resulting in the child dying. Killy then delivers the body of the kid to a woman with a dog who resides on an elevator and seems to be familiar with Killy to at least some extent. The theory goes that these scenes take place at some point after the final chapter, with the child that Killy is escorting, or the woman with the dog, being the child of Sibo that Killy is seen with at the end of the final chapter of the manga. However, I honestly don't think that this is the case. Despite how disconnected the first two chapters are from the third, which starts with Killy being knocked out and rescued by some humans, I still think that the first two chapters are a better fit at the start of the story than at the end. Considering the chapters of the story are framed as logs, it wouldn't make sense for these logs to be out of order, as they seem to be mostly told from Killy's perspective. To add to that, if we assume that the child Killy's escorting is Sibo's, that basically devalues the entirety of the rest of the story, as the child dies in the end anyways without being able to incite any meaningful change in the world. Otherwise, if we assume that the woman with the dog is Sibo's daughter, then why are their hands made of cybernetic parts if they're supposed to be a pure human with the genes to control the city? And past that, why is Killy looking for other humans if they have one with the gene already? I know that it could be in order to create a population of humans with the net terminal gene, but even that doesn't explain why Killy acts the way he does towards the woman, seeing as they probably would have spent a long time together in life, and all things considered, Killy seems pretty unconcerned with the woman's actions. Altogether, I think it's much more likely that these two chapters take place at the start of the story in the order that they were released. Instead, I think that these two chapters show the call to adventure that Killy receives to start climbing the city once more. The child that Killy's escorting is probably just someone that Killy suspects has the net terminal gene, seeing as he only determines how to check this later in the story. But since this child is killed, Killy is sent up the city, and that's where we find him in chapter 3. The woman with the dog is likely a comrade of Killy. Killy is being made by the administration to find somebody with the net terminal gene, and it's likely that both this woman and the person she's on the phone with are both also creations of the admin who were made in order to help Killy on his quest. But that's just a theory. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully this video helped break down the series at least a little. This manga is confusing as all hell, but it's also extremely cool and interesting because of that. But yeah, hope you guys liked this video, and I'll see you all next week. Bye!